I think it's increasing exponentially. It's no longer a secret. We've got, 30,000 drones that have been ordered that are going to be flying over the continental United States of America, and that many of these drones are going to be armed with more than just cameras. They are going to be armed with munitions. We've got the NDAA still in effect, even after a federal judge in New York ruled that the indefinite detention provision of NDAA is not constitutional. In spite of that, the Congress, the very next day, went ahead and reauthorized NDAA for the year 13 and included the indefinite detention provision of NDAA. That was after a federal judge in New York City ruled the day before that provision was not constitutional. The Congress turns right around the very next day and reintroduces it to NDAA 13. So, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat on Capitol Hill or in the White House. This bent toward a police state, toward this global governance, and turning our military. Now we've got the U.S. Army Chief of Staff is on record as saying that it's up to the U.S. Army to facilitate domestic law enforcement against American citizens.
Yeah, that was put out by the Council on Foreign. So we have members of the government that's coming out, head of the Army, saying in the CFR, we're foreign commanded and we're going to have local military respond for the police. Exactly. It's all going into hyperdrive. Why?
Well, because I think they know they've got the momentum, and I think they've got the opportunity that they haven't had in probably ever. Start to say in decades, but ever. I don't think they've ever had an opportunity like they have today to go ahead and implement all these things that they've been trying to implement for how long? How long has this been going on, Alex? This is going on for decades and decades.
And what, behind the scenes quietly, exactly, this giant secret program is now decloaking, which means they're about to launch it. Is it stage terror, bioweapons? Clearly they want war with the people. What is it they've got planned that's so horrible they know we're going to resist, and they've got to have all this ready? Wow.
Yeah, well, that's the question that none of us know. But the fact is, all of the handwriting's on the wall. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure this out here. You've got a federal government that is in positioning itself to declare war on the American citizenry. I don't know how to say it. It seems to me that all of these things that have been going on have now come to fruition. And what's going to be the seismic event? That's going to be the starting gun that's going to unleash all these laws and all these executive orders and so forth. And nobody knows. Nobody knows what, nobody knows when. But the fact is that all of the preparations are in place. People are talking about it openly. There's not even really, they're not trying to hide it anymore.
Oh, yeah. What did you think when the Army, we got that document, just like my ex saying you were basically a terrorist and Ron Paul was. And people didn't believe it for a week till the government admitted it. We got the Army document saying re-education camps for political dissidents in America and how to isolate us. And then the Army came out a week later and said, yeah, that's ours. What did you think? It's like even I can't believe. Really? You even call them re-education camps? I'm not going to a re-education camp. Yeah,
that's what I say. The opportunity that they have, I think they feel, is an opportunity that has been their time to come. And
well, I agree with you, but I think they're doing it because they know there's a wake-up happening.
Well, they're probably going to orchestrate the wake-up. Yeah, I don't think that anything that happens of that nature is accidental. Do you?
No, I don't. And let's be clear from history. Let's see if you agree with my basic analysis, and biblically as well, which is history. The elites are guided by an evil force. Call it the devil, Diablo, whatever you want. The color out of space, as Lovecraft called it. They always set themselves up for their own destruction. They're intelligent, but they're not wise. And I agree with you. I think things have to get really bad, and the judgment is actually the wake-up. I think the hedge of protection lowering, the shields are down, like Star Trek, the Klingons can now fire, they've uncloaked. I believe this is the beginning of the victory. What do you say to that?
I'm very optimistic, Alex. I believe that there's a God in heaven, and I believe that this God in heaven loves liberty, and he loves people who love liberty. And I believe that there still is a opportunity and a land for liberty in this country. I don't think for 1 minute that God is going to abandon the people that believe in liberty. And how exactly he plans on reestablishing liberty in this country, I don't know. I don't have the mind of God, but I am very optimistic for the fact that no matter what the globalists and what the elitists have in store for us and how powerful they think they are, that there are still millions and millions of people across this country that believe in freedom, they believe in God, they believe in liberty, and the principles enshrined in our Constitution, our Declaration and Bill of Rights, and they are not going to lay down, roll over, and just let liberty be destroyed in this country. They're just not going to do it. And I believe that God is going to raise up a remnant. I think he's already doing it. We're seeing it here in our neck of the woods. Other places around the country are seeing it as well. And I'm optimistic that whatever the elites have in store for us, I think God is greater than they are, and liberty is certainly greater than tyranny.
Well, you said it. In closing, we sell your book. It's excellent. Every pastor in America should be given this, because I've gone to church after church here in Austin, and they're good people. They're awake. They love God. They're awake in that. I mean, and I run to my listeners, but it's then a worship of the police state and, do what you're told. And they're not even so much clergy response team, but above them is that. Even in small churches, it's Hitler's favorite verse, do what the government says, it's God. Well, we're the people, we are the government. And I know your book breaks this down. It's short, it's sweet, it's very well written. It's available at Infowars.com. Even if you're not a Christian out there, folks, 80% or 75% say they are. They go to church, and the average church is not a church. It's now a charity. It's government-controlled. It's their brainwashing people. This is such a key weapon to get to your pastors. In fact, I keep forgetting there's a little church down the street, a Baptist church, where we've been 2 or 3 times, and they're good people, but there's always some government worship in there. And I'm going to go give this to the pastor. Actually, I'm going to do it this Sunday. Romans 13, The True Meaning of Submission, 2nd edition. Timothy Baldwin is a constitutional lawyer, son, and Chuck Baldwin, of course, who's on with us now. Spend 5 minutes. You've got the floor, Pastor, in closing, to tell us about the book and the basic facts of is worship of the government what we're supposed to do? Because my whole Old Testament and New Testament is nothing but resistance to corrupt governments. But, I guess I'm reading a different Bible than the folks pushing this.
Yeah, maybe you must be reading the real Bible. If you were to take out all the examples in both testaments of the men and women who resisted civil authority because that civil authority trampled upon their convictions as people of God, you would probably eliminate 3/4 of the Bible. Most of the examples of Scripture relative to the men and women of Scripture relate to the resistance to civil government in one form or another. So that's the history of Christianity. It's the history of America. I get really perturbed at these pastors who say on the one hand that the founding fathers were illegal and criminal whenever they revolted against the crown and fought our war for independence on the one hand, and then every July 4th they'll have these patriotic services in their churches and extol the virtues of the United States of America and the founding fathers for bringing this country into existence. On the other hand, you can't have it both ways, and that's exactly what they try to do. The Bible from Old and New Testament gives proper jurisdiction to all authority, whether it's governmental authority, whether it's family authority, vocational authority. Every authority has a jurisdiction given by God. God is the only sovereign. He's the only king of the universe. He's the only one who has power and authority over all. To men, he gives limited authority. And with that limitation comes jurisdiction. And each jurisdiction has the responsibility to understand what is that jurisdiction and understand what is that authority, and then to relate to that authority based upon how they accept their responsibility. When they live within the confines of truth and the jurisdiction that God has granted them, they should be submitted to. They should be respected. They should be obeyed, as we all try to do those that are in authority. But when that authority figure oversteps that boundary, whenever he oversteps that jurisdiction that God has given him, then he becomes a tyrant. And he deserves not our respect, nor does he deserve our obedience. We are required by God to resist an evil, unlawful authority. Because when we do that, we've allowed that tyrant to become like God over us. And we have no other gods except God over us. That's the very first and greatest commandment. So we cannot allow anyone in a limited jurisdictional role to overstep that boundary that God has given them in their authority without becoming idolaters. If we allow a government or a pastor or a husband or father or a boss at work or a policeman or anybody else to overstep that God-given boundary, that God-given jurisdiction that he has from his Creator, we, the person that submits to that tyranny, we have become an idolater.
Well, that's right. And if you look at the communist Chinese, they won't even allow Falun Gong to do exercises. Communism, total government, always is at war with religion, period, but especially Christianity, because it wants to be the God. And I remember sitting in church as a kid going, don't have idols. I didn't know what that meant, a golden calf. It's the worship of that system, putting it first. And it's not God trying to run our lives and control us. God's saying, follow these basic rules or you're going to be slaves. I mean, it's so simple.
Exactly right. And that's why Tim and I wrote the book, because of this fallacious, erroneous interpretation of Romans 13, obey the government no matter what, which is prevalent among churches large and small all over the country. And I'm convinced if we don't awaken the pastors to the true meaning of Romans chapter 13, we're not going to have real restoration of liberty in this country. It's essential that the clergy awaken to their duty before God relative to the issues of liberty and freedom, and the understanding of Romans chapter 13, and not just that passage, but the entire passage of Scripture as it relates to this topic, must be identified and understood. And so that's why we felt it was so important to write this book.